I was thinking John was going to ask my political issue. Yeah, you got. That's more important than this.
Meeting. Please place any cell phones or any other devices that might disrupt the meeting in silent mode or turn off. And would you please stand, say the Pledge of Allegiance with us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And item 2 is the roll call. Ms. Greenia, would you please do the roll call?
Commissioner Barr,
Here.
Chair Zarnicki,
Present.
Commissioner Farina,
Here.
Commissioner Kyle,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Perry,
Here.
Commissioner Warnock.
Here.
Quorum present. Thank you, Ms. Greenia. Agenda item 3, approval of the agenda, October 4, 2023. Are there any comments on the agenda? If not, no changes, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for October 4th Planning Commission meeting as printed.
Now support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Kyle and support by Commissioner Warnock to approve the October 4, 2023 agenda as printed. Ms. Greenia, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Barr,
Yes.
Chair Zarnicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Farina,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Kyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Commissioner Warnock.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Agenda item 4 is the chairperson's opening remarks. Tonight's meeting will follow the agenda that was posted online and has been printed for you here and is available at the entrance to the room. It's important to let everyone know that the Planning Commission is created by state law. The commission is comprised of 7 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. The role of the Planning Commission is to plan and promote the efficient, coordinated development of the city for the health, safety, and general welfare of its residents. We are not here to negotiate with applicants or allow everything an applicant is requesting. However, the Planning Commission does have the power to approve certain requests and recommend others, depending on the nature of the request and whether all of the standards in the zoning ordinance have been met. The Planning Commission may also impose conditions on a proposed project in order to ensure that those standards are met. Other individuals here seated with us this evening are Alyssa Erickson, our legal representative, Lauren Sayre, our planning representative, and City Clerk Cindy Greenia. We have no public hearings this evening, so I will go to agenda item number 5, the approval of the minutes, September 6, 2023. Any comments on the minutes as prepared? Any revisions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Farina and support by Commissioner Kyle to approve the September 6, 2023 minutes as prepared. Ms. Greenia, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Barr,
Yes.
Chair Zarnicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Farina,
Yes.
Commissioner Kyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer, Commissioner Perry,
Yep.
Commissioner Warnock.
Yes.
Okay, minutes have been approved. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 6, new business. A, public notices, we have none. Agenda 7, unfinished business, review, discussion, and possible modification of site plan approval for Fraser Hockey Land, Big Beaver Restaurant, 34,400 Utica Road. Ms. Erickson, do you have a report for us, or Ms. Sarah?
I personally do not have a report. I would leave that up to the applicant in terms of what their request may be.
Okay, and Ms. Sarah, do you agree? You have no comments?
Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay, all right, applicant, all three of you, one of you, yes, up to the table, make sure you're speaking in the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Randy Hermes, attorney on behalf of General Counsel for Big Boy, and then attorney appearing on behalf of Fraser Hockey Land Arena, Novi, Michigan, unless you want the full street address.
No, that's okay, thank you.
All right, so we were here at the last meeting discussing basically moving this project forward. We had hit a couple of snags, mainly dealing with the shared parking agreements that were conditions to the original site plan approval that from, I believe, September of '22. After that meeting, representatives of this, well, I reached out to the city attorney's office, to Clark, Andrew, and Ms. Erickson, and we had a really, I feel like, productive couple of weeks of conversations up until really yesterday, or even this morning. We were still sort of discussing some of the outstanding issues. So the city attorney's office forwarded us a list of what, after meeting and conferring with all of the relevant departments within the city, planning, zoning, building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They gave us a list that basically represented all the outstanding issues that would have to be cleared up before we could obtain a certificate of occupancy to operate the restaurant that's on site. There were a couple of major issues that we ran across. One was the original site plan called for a deceleration lane. That would have been a major project because it would require a lot of work for the underground plumbing and electrical and all other kinds of stuff that I believe Jim Butler can speak to a lot better than I can. And then the other issue was the shared parking agreements and whether or not there was, we already had sufficiently met the requirement for the parking spots required of us. And what I expressed to the city attorney's office and to the other people that were involved in this email chain was that I would be asking you all to do a couple of things. First would be to modify the original approval and change a couple of the conditions so that we achieve what you want to achieve in spirit without having a overly burdensome obligation placed on us that we at this point cannot meet. We, as I expressed last time, we cannot force a third party, an unrelated party, to enter into an agreement with us. However, we can still meet the requirements of the city if certain conditions are altered. And before I get into specifically which conditions and what the language that we will be proposing is, basically my understanding of this, of the major issues, is that before this project was brought in front of you all, the Hockeyland Arena had certain problems, whether it was with their parking lot, whether it was not being in violation of ordinances, whatever it was. There are historical issues that prompted you all to tie these things together, aside from the fact that these projects are both on the same site, and you wanted to make sure that the applicant that the applicant complied with what you were trying to achieve. And so I believe we can do that if we just modify a little bit of the language from the conditions that were originally placed on the site plan approval. And I'm not going to speak for you all, but my perspective on this issue is there is a concern that the hockey arena will have events that will cause problems. Let's just say that. They'll cause traffic problems, parking problems, security problems. And you want to make sure, among other things, that there's at least sufficient parking for these types of events, what are termed extreme events. And the way that the conditions were put in place, a certain amount of parking spots were necessary so that there would be sufficient parking for these extreme events if they did occur. We're able to meet those, the parking spot requirements, but not with the particular parties that were spelled out in the conditions. So the Fraser Public Schools have been gracious enough to assure us that they can provide all the overflow parking we would ever need and much, much more if necessary. However, at this juncture, our goal, the applicant's goal, is to get the site plan conditions to where they can be met, and that we can obtain a certificate of occupancy to get the restaurant up and going, because that portion of the project's been completed. And so there were a lot of small issues that we went back and forth on. Easement, there were utility easements that we wanted to make sure were in place. We talked about the shared parking agreements. We talked about a host of other issues, and then also the deceleration lane. The deceleration lane issue, the people at Macomb County recommended that it's no longer necessary. It's no longer necessary to have a decel lane there because that was originally recommended, not required, but it was recommended and incorporated into the site plan that Mr. Butler put together because this site, the project was going to be a lot bigger than what it eventually became. It was supposed to be two separate buildings. It became one. It was supposed to be 6,500 square feet or so. It dropped down by about 500 to 1,000 square feet. So Macomb County's position is that a decel lane is not recommended or required. We had McKenna, we had that conversation with them. The gentleman, Mike, and I can't pronounce his last name, I forgot.
Versionon, I think.
There we go.
Ignorant, yeah. Ignorant.
Yeah, sure.
It's
As far
hard
as
to
I know.
pronounce.
Sure.
We know who you mean.
Engineer.
Listen, like I said, I went to Warren Mott, so Polish names I can do. Italian names, sometimes I get tripped up. But he's, upon review, he also came to the conclusion that a decel lane is not required. And so I believe what we will have to do is update those plans and resubmit them, showing that the decel lane is not there anymore. However, it is this, and I don't want to speak for the city, but from what we understand, it's the city's position as well as the county's position that a decel lane is no longer required. So that was one major hurdle, here that, we cleared. Now back to the shared parking agreements. I believe the conditions in place are there's an overkill. The very first condition already states what the applicant must do when they want to have an extreme event, which is that they have to apply to the city, they have to request approval for such an event. Part of that approval requires that they have, among other things, a security plan, an overflow parking plan, and then how we intend to pay for it. That's already there. And my understanding also, and I believe Mr. Kowalski, who was here with us last month, Mr. Kowalski stated that Hockey Line has already gotten an approval for an extreme event just recently because they were able to put together a plan showing that there would be sufficient overflow parking, there would be security, there would be shuttle service, et cetera. And so the mechanism is already in place. That very first condition already empowers the city and makes the applicant beholden to the city for approval for such events. And therefore, it is our position that requiring us to have agreements in place for shared parking for events that may or may not have it, may or may not happen, but for which the city already has a mechanism in place to allow or not allow, based on the city's discretion, that's already there in that very first condition. And so what we're going to be asking is to remove language requiring the applicant to have shared parking agreements that are in recordable form outside of, Alyssa brought this up to me earlier, outside of certain cross easements and things like that for cross-access and utility where we will have some sort of parking language in there. But what we would like to see is that we take out the conditions that say you have to have parking agreements with so-and-so and so-and-so, Meyer, Total Sports, whatever, because the city already has a process in place. The city has already exercised its discretion under that process. There's already a committee. It's a one-man committee. And he's been able to review. And in this case, he said yes. And maybe down the line, whether it's Bob Logan or it's somebody else, and we present them with a plan, maybe they say no. And so we don't feel like it's, we feel like it's onerous and it's somewhat overkill to require us to enter into these third-party agreements. I won't mention the name of one of the parties, but one of the parties that we had negotiations with for 2 years, and they were happy to sign, and when it came time to pull the trigger, well, then they came back and asked for close to $100,000 a year for roughly 40, 50 spots. I mean, not saying that that's an impossibility, but it is so overwhelmingly prohibitive, it's so cost prohibitive, that we just can't do it. And so, but at the same time, I don't want to sit here and say, well, there isn't any way that we can abide with the spirit of what the Planning Commission is trying to accomplish, because I truly believe that that mechanism is in place already. And so there are a bunch of other small issues, finaling out some inspections and things like that. I believe Jim will talk about something with the curb that needs to be fixed. I don't know, that's, again, his area. But if we can get that language straightened out, and I have the specific provisions that need to be altered, if we can do that, if the Planning Commission is willing to entertain that and willing to vote on it, I believe we are in a position where, by the end of this month, we can get a certificate of occupancy and get this place up and running. And this can be off your desks, God willing, for a very long time, because I know that this has been going back and forth for the better part of 4 years now. And so we want to be done with it. I'm sure you want to be done with it. I think there's a way for us to achieve that. I feel confident after speaking to Clark, to Alyssa, to everybody else. We had a Zoom call that was very productive a few days ago, late last week. We've been going back and forth in emails. I think everything is there. We just have to get this language about the shared parking agreements tweaked. And if we can do that, we'll be done, and you'll never have to see my great face again.
So you get the parking agreements tweaked, you don't have a decel, you don't need the decel lane anymore. Do you know how many parking spaces you have? Or maybe Mr. Butler can.
He can, but I believe it's 500, and the better part of, well, it's close to 600. It's in the upper 500s.
So
It's
we're not
enough, it's enough, my understanding is, it's enough for the site without those special events.
Okay, Mr.
534 is what it says up there, is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Butler, go ahead. Identify
Good evening,
yourself.
Jim Butler, PEA Group, address is 1849 Pond Run, Auburn Hills, Michigan, 48326. The Zoning Board of Appeals, several years ago, granted us a variance for a maximum of, provide for parking required of 525 spaces. The arrow that you have up here on the screen right now provides for 534 spaces. So essentially, we're 9 spaces more than what we need.
9?
9
More, in excess.
in excess.
Thank you.
Related to the drive access, we did work with the Macomb County Department of Roads to get them to remove the condition of installing that deceleration lane. And Randy is correct, at one point in time, the traffic study was done, and there were 2 buildings, about 10,000 square feet to be actually true. The building went from 6,000 to 5,000, that's what's on site today, what you see with the big boy. We will be reconfiguring the drive approach to make it larger. As you see across Utica Road, there is a boulevarded entrance. Our entrance right now, as you can kind of see, is a little smaller. We're going to have to meet the geometrics, the same geometrics across the street. So we'll have to reconfigure.
Oh, okay, the 2, yes, okay. Do you have it in writing that the county and our engineering consultant says that you don't need the decel lane anymore?
Yes,
And in writing?
yes.
Okay, Mr. Hermes, you said you have your list of items, but we have nothing in front of us. We have nothing in front of us to go by.
I wish you did. I mean,
I wish
we've
we
been
did
talking
too.
about this for a month, so it's not like this is new. Everybody knows what we're here for.
We, as a board, are here in front of you again with nothing in front of us. So it's
I
a
can't
little
speak to that.
frustrating
I
for
believe-
myself.
I believe the city attorney's office can speak to that.
Okay, and yeah, it's, I do have, Mr. Jablonski, did you have anything to say before I, ask the board for comments or anything?
However, I'm
Just here to help them.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I will say this. It is my understanding from my conversations with Mr. Andrews that the city attorney's office, thank you. It's my understanding that if we ask you to consider these changes, you are in a position to entertain them and vote on them. And
We
so.
have nothing.
But I don't think you need anything, to be honest with you, because what are we asking for here?
I
It's nothing
think-
technical.
And again, we have nothing in writing. We don't have a plan in front of us. I'm speaking for myself here personally. I don't know how my colleagues feel. I do have Commissioner Farina who wants to say something. Commissioner Farina, go ahead. Questions?
I think we talked last time, and I think you got the wrong impression. I really don't care who is on that agreement. You agreed to X number of spots. Now, there are other locations, if the school doesn't give you what you need. There is a bank building at 14 in Utica that's vacant. I'm sure that bank holding company would give you a parking agreement for that lot that's not being used. Secondly, I see that the lot up there is green still. You said that you needed that lot when you applied for parking, overflow parking for the event. What are your plans for that lot?
Can I answer?
Sure.
At this time, nothing.
Okay.
At this time, nothing, because again, like I mentioned, you have a condition in place that allows you to say no to special events. And so at this point, what I'm going to reiterate is, I believe if you really look at this thing, your very first condition allows you.
Thank you for your answer. Okay? I have another question. You said you had a special event. Okay? How many people were at that special event?
Can't tell you, I don't know.
Well, then how do you know you had a special event?
We applied for an extreme event.
It was 50, I think it was 50 people under a special.
No, it met the requirement, 1,570, we had more than 1,575 attendees. And so my understanding is that any event that will have more than 1,575 attendees is considered an extreme event. And in that case, the applicant has to seek permission which is literally your very first condition.
Mm-hmm.
They have to present a plan, and they have to seek permission. The city has a committee in place, which at this point, it's a one-man committee, my understanding, I was not involved directly, but the applicant, so Mr. Kowalski, met with the city manager, the mayor, and Bob Logan. They reviewed the plan for overflow parking, for police presence, for the shuttles, and the city approved it, and we had the event.
How did the event go?
Very well, very
you have
good. I don't know who won. Tom, do you know who won? No. And that's my resident hockey
Neither do
guy,
we.
so,
I heard it on the media. I mean, a lot of big,
and that's my resident hockey guy. So
We're talking my time now. I'm with the chairman. I know nothing about these agreements. I have heard nothing from, I normally get an email from Clark. I got nothing from Clark, about what was going on, what the negotiation.
agreed on,
And what
right.
was agreed on.
yes.
So I'm totally in the dark. So,
I think that's something the city attorney can answer.
If I may, Mr. Farina.
absolutely.
If the commission has questions regarding certain conditions or agreements that are within the conditions for approval, I'd be happy to discuss them. I am prepared today to answer any questions. Should the commission have them? Should the commission wish to modify the site plan today? So
I don't know what that means. If we have questions,
if
what did you negotiate with these people?
I wouldn't say negotiations, Mr. Farina. I would just say that Mr. Hermes presented his requests to change the conditions that are in place, and I'm prepared to answer any questions regarding his requested changes.
What is your position, your legal position on this?
Well, I think that in terms of what his request is, I would be able to give an opinion in terms of what that looks like legally. For example, the cross-access easements we've discussed at length, those both contain shared parking with Big Boy. They contain shared parking with that vacant lot that formerly used to be with the Lions Club, I believe totaling around 180 parking spaces. That is something that the applicant is not requesting to modify this evening, is my understanding. The utilities easements, those were sent over to us yesterday. Those obviously are something that goes through the city, engineering, things of that nature, that our office would not know about. So those would go through the city channels. Those would have to be approved. Again, that's not something that the applicant is looking to modify, as far as I know. The applicant is solely looking to get rid of the shared parking agreements, mainly in condition number 11, dealing with the 4 entities as he had previously described. And, that's obviously up to the Planning Commission, whether, one, it wants to act on the applicant's request this evening, but two, whether shared parking should be removed in totality, whether there should be shared parking solely in those cross-access easements based on the agreements that we have seen. If the Planning Commission would want to require shared parking with Fraser Public Schools, with 1 entity, with 2 entities, things of that nature. So I think it may, and I don't want to speak for the commission or the applicant, but I think it may be best to perhaps go through each condition, and should the commission feel as though they would be prepared to act on that request, maybe they would have a better understanding as to what the actual request is from the applicant.
What was the original designation of number of parking spaces?
Could you clarify that question? I'm sorry.
4 years ago when you came in, you were told by Sarah Trexler how many parking spaces you needed.
For the site or for the site for?
For a special-
For a special event. Yeah, I don't know. It's changed several times. I can't tell you.
No, it hasn't. Never changed.
It has.
The requirement was over 926 spaces.
Thank you. Yes, it was. Now you're saying you want to go with 500 spaces.
Yeah, we do. But not for special events, just for regular.
For day-to-day.
Day-to-day operation. And when we have a special event, we'll apply. And then the city can make a determination as to whether we have sufficient overflow parking. We'll present that as part of a plan. And if we don't, then you can say to, go kick rocks. And if we do and you think it's doable, then you can allow us to do it just like we did last month.
So you have an agreement in place with the school system that says they will provide enough parking to meet the 900?
Nope, I do not. I could get it, but I don't feel like it's necessary. I'm asking you to look at this over again and to take away the shared parking agreement requirement, Mr. Farina.
You're all set.
I'm good. He answered the question.
Commissioner Meyer?
What do you consider as an extreme event?
That was something that you already defined, and it's an event with over 1,575 attendees. And we just had one recently in September, where under the first condition of the site plan approval, we sought permission from the city, provided the city with a plan. The city reviewed the plan, found that we had sufficient overflow parking, met the security requirements, and approved it.
Answer your question, Commissioner Meyer. Any other questions?
Well, Commissioner Farina asked about the lot, the grass lot for the Lions Club. And I assume it's your intention not to pave the lawn area?
I know that that lot is going to get developed. I'm just not sure what it's going to be developed as. But again, if we need overflow parking for an extreme event, that lot would not be utilized for it because it's currently unpaved. And when we just recently had one in September, we were able to provide overflow parking at a separate location. And then we shuttled attendees over.
Where did you shuttle from?
I believe we used the school district property right around the corner.
No more questions at the
Okay,
time.
Commissioner Farina?
Yeah, my question's to McKenna. Has your position changed in the number of parking spots? Sarah Trexler is the one who designated that as the number of parking spots that would be required by, as the position of the planners changed?
I would say that we also didn't, receive a formal application on this, so we also wouldn't feel necessarily comfortable making a formal
Your cut short too.
recommendation.
Yeah, okay. I have one other question. Are you aware of the changes that have happened to that corner in the last year?
Could you clarify that question?
There's an additional restaurant that has opened in the last year.
Okay,
Very successful.
God bless.
To the point, yeah, to the point that they are parking into the subdivision. Last night, I almost got hit with two people coming out of the sub. And you don't think it's required? And have you talked to the county about putting a light in there? Instead of a deceleration lane, having a light? I know that's not,
Discussion with the county about putting a light in there. No.
I know we did when we first started, and they said it wasn't required because there wasn't enough traffic.
Doesn't meet the warrants is what they typically are.
Okay.
It takes time for the county to determine if a traffic light is necessary, is required, so. And I don't think the parking for the restaurant across the street has any relationship to the parking in Hockey Land. I would say consider the Hockey Land site itself for the parking. I agree with Ms. Sarah, she doesn't have anything in front of her, she doesn't have a formal application. Again, I'm going to ask a question about the dumpster, though. We have a history that was prepared in a communication by Paul Urbiel. He was our former planning consultant. And one of the bullets that he highlighted that were discussed, oh my gosh, the last time this development was discussed, I guess, in September. August. One of the bullets saying that the dumpster enclosure is no longer going to be screened with shrubs, but instead with 2 deciduous trees around the perimeter of the enclosure. I don't remember having any discussion. I'm assuming that the dumpster enclosure is still going to be masonry as required.
Yes.
That's, okay.
That is
all right.
correct.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. That was my question. Personally, I have no concerns with the conditions that you are asking, that I understand that you're asking, Mr. Hernandez. I say parking's going to be fine. Should you think you're going to need new parking, you have to come right back to the city and get the agreement, their agreement to it. You don't have to go to the ZBA anymore because the parking, you're okay with that. Deceleration, you're saying is a no, you don't have to have that. Dumpster to me is cleared up. I'm okay with the plan. My problem is I want a plan in front of me.
Well, we're not changing the plan.
You have to change the plan. You're
I don't think so.
Changing the entrance that Mr. Butler said
Yeah,
he was
for
going to
that.
change.
For that, but for what, my goal tonight is to take this shared parking agreement issue and figure it out. You have the conditions right up there. There are literally 4 conditions that I'd like to change. They are up there. I can go through them with you. If you're willing to consider them, if you're willing to entertain, to make the change, my understanding from the city attorney's office is that it's well within, at your discretion, whether or not you want, if you want to change them, you could take a vote and change them or not. I mean, they don't require you to, they don't require any changes to plans. They are things that you required. They are things that I think we can modify.
Commissioner Farina?
We have McKenna on staff here because we are not planners, and I don't know that you're a planner either. So you go and you seek somebody else's knowledge, and if she has not had a chance to look at this thing and make her recommendation, I don't know how I can vote on it.
Okay. But I'm telling you that I'm not asking you to rule on a planning issue. What I'm asking you to look at is a requirement that you already have in place, but then you have additional requirements that are sort of related, but they're making it difficult, they're impossible for us to achieve. And so whether, it doesn't change how many parking spots we need, those you already understand that we have.
Oh, we don't, because it's not in front of us.
No, but
Not
you
on
do,
paper.
because they're literally on that site plan that was up there, and Jim we just talked about that. I think we have the number of parking spots that we need for day-to-day operation on these sites. Forget the extreme events. We have that number of spots. We're 9 over. So we have that. I think everybody understands that we have that. What I'm saying is if you go back and look at condition number 1, condition number 1 states the applicant must provide a 60-day advance notice of a significant event, which includes extreme events, which you've defined elsewhere as an event that has over 1,575 attendees, and a plan to handle parking, traffic, and safe pedestrian circulation. And it must be submitted by the applicant to the city's development review team at least 60 days in advance of the proposed extreme event to be reviewed administratively by the city. That very first condition gives the city discretion as to whether or not Hockeyland can have an extreme event, which you have defined as an event that has 1,576 attendees or more. And so we agree to that. We have no problem with that. What we're talking about is other conditions such as condition 5, condition 6, condition 7, condition 11 specifically. Condition 11 states, and that's on the next page, I believe, shared parking and lease agreements with Total Soccer, the Lions Club, Meyer, the Fraser Schools must be reviewed and approved by the city attorney, executed and recorded with the Macomb County Register of Deeds. So I'm going to pause right there. Condition 1 gives you unfettered discretion to approve or deny an extreme event request if there is not enough parking. However, condition 11 makes us obligated to negotiate agreements with these people for something that you already have the discretion to control. So that's where I'm saying to you, whether we need 900 or 9,000 or 9 million parking spots, make that determination. When we present you with a plan, if we don't meet what you want, say no. It is, you already have the condition in place for you to be able to do that. And so you have condition 1, which I believe achieves what the city wants to achieve, but then you have condition 11, which makes it impossible for us to achieve what we want to achieve, even though it's basically overkill.
Is there anybody here that can talk for this?
Commissioner Kyle.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think the question is answered. Can you flip back to number 5 and 7? So 5 is shared parking 2. And 6 is pretty much shared parking 2. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. Thank you.
They're just related.
Understand, it's just shared parking all over it.
Commissioner Farina, go ahead.
Is there anybody here who can say that the city has agreed to that? That the city manager has agreed to this?
Agreed to what, Mr. Farina?
What he's saying that they've agreed to?
I think he was indicating that for
I
the,
don't want to know. I want to know if there's anybody who can speak for the city manager who says she has agreed to this.
I don't think anyone can speak for the city manager.
They just had one though, correct?
Do you have any documentation as to what transpired during the Zoom meetings among the applicants and administration?
Documentation-wise, I know that a plan was sent over that was dated September 27th, I believe, Mr. Butler. Correct. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the only change that was on that plan was removal of the deceleration lane. Is that right?
That is correct.
So it still mirrors what was originally in front of the Planning Commission and what this approval is based on.
That is correct.
So that would be one sort of documentation, I guess, if that's what you would call it, Madam Chair. In terms of any other documentation, I think probably the cross-access easement that we received from the Big Boy lot to the main Fraser Hockey Land lot. We've talked to Mr. Hermes about providing us with the cross-access between the former Lions Club parcel and the main Fraser Hockey Land parcel, which we discussed yesterday. And the utility easements, as I mentioned, those were sent over as well. But that's probably all the documentation, I would say, that we have discussed back and forth.
But nothing is in writing to say what your conversations have entailed, so that we would know what the city's, there's not, like, we've gotten documentations from Mr. Clark stating before, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is our recommendation. We don't have anything like that from your office or from the planners, so that we know what has been discussed.
Yes, and I believe that was more of a status update, Commissioner Meyer. So at this instance, it's not really our office's place to give you a recommendation whether or not you should modify these conditions. That is completely up to the commission's discretion. And that's what we've discussed with the applicant as well, is that, obviously our office, our role is to provide legal advice, and if the commission has a question about what these modifications may entail legally, or what that may mean legally, we would be here to give our opinion or our thoughts on it. But I do think in the past it's been more so of updates and things of that nature as to where we were at in the process, and I think it's changed a little bit in the past month.
I do have another question.
Go ahead.
Do we have an issue if we let this go and we say we agree to not have them, whether we say that they need to have this agreement with Total Soccer, Fraser Fraser Public School Districts, the Lions Club, or Meyer, or one entity, which you said that you could do with Fraser Public Schools. Suppose we say, okay, fine, we are fine with this, and we let it go. Are we putting ourselves, the Planning Commission and the City of Fraser, in a position that someone else, a developer, a builder within this city finds out that these 14 items were conditions in order to get the building, in order to give the owner a certificate of occupancy? Have we put ourselves in a position that we could be sued by another entity because we let all of these items slide? Or at least the items that he wants to have we put ourselves in a position that we could be sued?
Well, I'm first going to say that just because the Planning Commission removes a condition or changes a condition does not change the standards for obtaining a certificate of occupancy. So just because if for example, the condition regarding no certificate of occupancy may be issued until these agreements are in place, just because that is perhaps removed by the commission does not mean that the building does not have to go through the building department for mechanical, for fire, for everything like that.
I realize that.
So-
But that number 11 or number 12 is tied to getting a certificate of occupancy.
I understand what you're saying, but that does not, removal of that condition does not mean that he's going to be able to get a certificate of occupancy tomorrow just because the Planning Commission removed that condition. This is solely about site plan approval. So if for some reason mechanical inspection fails, if there's another thing that the building department requires that I have no idea what they might require for a C of O, that would be through, like any other applicant that would come before the commission, they would still have to comply with whatever else the building department requires for a certificate of occupancy. I hope that answers your question.
I think so.
Commissioner Warden.
For one thing, this is a unique contract, if you want to call it a contract, agreement, let's say. It's just for this specific. It has no relation to any other site plans at all. So this uniqueness is why we just act on this alone for this. When it comes to the city manager or whatever being involved, that's why we have a legal counsel. Legal was involved with all meetings, if I'm not mistaken.
We've been involved in numerous meetings with.
So we trust you. That's what you're here for. We don't need a written agreement from the city manager. We don't need a written agreement from anybody else. As long as you, our legal counsel, is telling us this is the way it is, then we have to trust you. We're not lawyers. We're not enforcement agency. We're here just to make sure that things were done to get to the point that we are. And I believe they were, personally, in just my discussions, too, with others. This just, it makes sense. The modifications here to the agreements make sense. Shared parking and lease agreement with total size. That's if they are. So Meyer's not involved now, let's say. That would be if there was one then. If you read that legally, just even with that reading, the fact that Meyer isn't involved now doesn't mean a thing. It could just say, it could just be the involvement with Fraser Schools. But the whole thing comes back to the fact that administration has a say-so first. It makes the most sense. We're going around the bush and not looking at the true facts of what's actually happening here. We can talk forever on this, and we don't have it in front of us. I trust our legal that this was taken care of. And if you're telling us it was, we can act on it. We don't need to wait for something even in writing. For us, we're not a binding contract. We are not going to affect any other people that come in front of us with a plan like this because the uniqueness of this. So as long as you're telling me that you were involved, or legal counsel Clark or whatever, was involved, and I know they have been, none of us could be there at these things. It was all you. We have to rely on what you're telling us. And I trust you for that. So that's just my feelings.
Commissioner Farina?
I have a question, number 11. Are you saying, as our counselor, this is no longer required?
I
I don't care.
I am not saying that it is no longer required. I am saying that the applicant is requesting to remove this as part of his modification request to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission,
Let me say this. You, the legal department, put that in.
it's my understanding that that was a collaboration between McKenna at the time and our office in response to concerns raised by the commission as a mechanism to be able to ensure that there were specific entities
And
that the applicant could turn to.
And are you saying now that we are not required to have that? Because you're the one that says, we want it. Clark sat there and said, we want it in place so that if this is sold or goes someplace else, that it's recorded.
Correct. That's part of what I was saying is that always having specific entities, yes, that is absolutely top of the line. That's the desire for everything. You have specific places that you can put this overfull parking. Now, I think the applicant has presented to the commission that perhaps the conditions have changed or perhaps they're not obtainable by the applicant, which is why they're asking the commission to modify that condition.
Personally, I don't mind modifying that condition to say whatever he wants it to say with what other organization, but that it be put into the city's attorney and executed and recorded with the Macomb County Register of Deeds. I don't care who they make an agreement with, personally. I just care that my legal guy, the guy who sat there before you, said, that is what we need to do. And now he's coming back and saying, is that what you're telling me?
It's not necessarily what I'm telling you. I'm simply saying that, as I've said before, the condition was put in place in response to a concern by the commission and a concern by McKenna in order to have specific entities that the applicant could look to and utilize. I think that was put in place based on representations, whether that be by the current applicant or, prior representation by someone involved in the applicant's team. I don't really know. However, I will say that, as Mr. Emez has mentioned, there is discretion by the city with the extreme event provision that's in the conditions. There are cross-access easements with, as I mentioned, the former Lions Club parcel, which includes 170 spaces, and the Big Boy parcel as well. Those are not changing,
The cross-access agreement,
contains the shared parking.
yes. And has it been registered with Register of Deeds and
It has,
approved?
it has not been recorded. We have seen the one with Big Boy, the one that was sent by Mr. Hermez. And then the other one, it's a simple legal document that would just need to be sent to us and reviewed, but we don't really have any concern with it. It would be mirrored off the Big Boy one. He's already sent,
But it also says executed by the County Register of Deeds.
correct. So once we would give Mr. Hermez the go-ahead, he could go record it with the Macomb County Register of Deeds and be in compliance with the condition.
That's an automatic do?
What do you mean? Record,
I mean, it'll go through automatically?
what, yeah, you can actually go up to the Register of Deeds and get a stamp on the front page. And it'll give you the library page and all that.
Commissioner Kyle?
These extreme events have been going on for years, long before the Big Boy was ever built. And they've always went through the city, like you explained, they did on the last one. Was it last month, I think? So I don't understand why this is becoming such a huge issue. They don't need to have plenty of parking now. And if they had an extreme event, they're going to call the city, and just like they do before. And I remember the city not only has the places for the parking, but they had the extra police force out there for the traffic and everything else. And I don't think that the attorney firm is the one that started the shared parking. It was this board that did it, and I remember it. And I think if we have the ability to do it, I would like to just make a motion to remove number 11 and the other yellows on the other numbers of the shared parking.
Yeah, and I would have just, if that's what the commission would like to do, just a few
I'm only
housekeeping.
one person on the commission. I'm going to do it.
I know, but just
We'll see
just
what everybody says.
just to let the commission know, and I've talked to Mr. Hermes about that too. Obviously, his proposals are in the yellow. I, as legal counsel, would just make a few tweaks here and there to clean a few things up and
I
clarify a
understand
few
that there's other
things,
things
but
that's got to be done, but the
Yeah.
big thing is the shared parking. That's what's holding everything up.
Commissioner Kyle, if I can jump in,
You said it right. Usually everybody says Keel.
if I could jump in for just 1 second. So I think one of the concerns is with having these things recorded is so that future owners would have notice, right? But here's the thing, so these conditions are in the public record. And so in the future, when something's public record, it's automatic notice for a buyer, let's say, right? And so in the future, even if there was no condition 11 regarding the shared parking agreements, and let's say there are no parking agreements whatsoever that are registered with the Macomb County Register of Deeds, someone would see condition 1, which says you have to get approval before you have an event of 1,575 people or more.
Which is, you're already doing.
Which we're already doing, but not only that, this is a condition to the site plan. And so whoever comes and takes after, if somebody takes over the property after the current applicant, they're still gonna have to abide by that. And so whether or not there's any parking agreements registered with the Macomb County Register of Deeds, it has no bearing on whether or not someone actually has to come to the city to get approval. And let me state it even backwards. Let's say we had 25 shared parking agreements for thousands of parking spots. But if there's no condition 1, then no one's under any obligation to come to the city and get an approval anyway. Condition 1 is what matters, not 11. Condition 1 already gives the city the discretion.
Right.
And the city will take, literally, the first thing is a plan to handle parking. So whether there is parking available or there isn't, it really makes no difference. Now, maybe in the past, that condition was sort of an unspoken agreement. Well, now, it's expressed, and it's part of the conditions for the site plan approval, and whoever comes after us is gonna have to abide by it anyway.
I understand that, about the number 1, but
Yeah.
but we have to get rid of the other ones.
So what Ms. Erickson's saying, and I'm in agreement with her, what we want is we want to remove 11. Changing the other ones is just, there's some reference back to number 11, but then there's also some stuff about shared parking agreements, which Ms. Erickson brought up, which I agree with her, should still remain in there because it has to do with some of the cross-access and stuff.
I understand.
because if not, it would just allow access on the sites rather than parking, which if that's the planning commission's intent, we can revise the cross-access easements. I don't know if that's what the planning
Well,
commission is saying,
I think this has been
but
going on long enough, and it's obvious that it's not a big problem like we're making out to be. I'm not saying us, I mean, as it's been said, because in the past, for how many years Hockenham has been there, they always went through the city and did it. So if you're telling me all I need to do is make a motion to remove number 11, is that what you're saying?
so if that, I mean, obviously,
How about if I just say I want to make a motion, you say it?
I don't know if that's allowed, Mr. Kyle.
Come from
That
you.
was humor, that was.
I mean, you can make a motion with your specific changes, and I can help kind of wordsmith. As I mentioned, there are a few things that I would just like to clarify if the board is going to take action this evening on the modification request. Just because some of these conditions were in place when Hockeyland only owned the main parcel and maybe the Big Boy parcel. Now, the Lions Club parcel has been purchased by them. So just to clarify things for those in the future that want to look at all these fun minutes and conditions and try to piece everything together like I have. So I leave that to the commission, and I'll be happy to help.
Commissioner Farina? Do you have any comments? No? Oh, you're done? Okay.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kyle,
Yes,
you said there's these, and they said that, I forget which one you said, these major events have been going on for the last 10 years.
I said
The last-
last years, but
At the last meeting, he said there hasn't been one in the last 10 years. This is the only thing that's ever happened, and it wasn't classified as a major.
well, and I could be wrong on the time. I know there's been many extreme events there.
No.
I've lived in Fraser for 20-some years, and there's
Well-
been more than, I mean, you could probably answer that more than I could.
Buck
Again, I think
Buck
when Bud
answered
was
that
here-
last time. at
Yeah, I
our
think
last
when Bud
meeting.
was here, I think he said.
Yeah, he said, I remember
last
he saying
10 years or
last-
So there haven't been.
But there has been before
There
that.
was one last month where we had to come, the applicant had to go to the city and get permission. They presented their parking plan, they presented their security plan, their shuttles, et cetera. City looked it over. Bob Logan thought it was fine, and they approved it.
Did everything go good?
My understanding is it went well, but again, I wasn't there, so I can't speak to that personally. Again, it comes back to the mechanism is in place. It's in condition 1. Condition 11 is overbroad and onerous. We'd like to remove condition 11. And then with Ms. Erickson, we can clean up some of the reference back terms and things like that so that everything is congruous and we don't have any issues with the easements and the cross-access and stuff like that. We just want to remove the thing that says we got to go to Meyer and Total Sports and whatever and get an agreement. If we need to have an event, there's a mechanism in place. It is a condition to the approval, so therefore, whoever takes after us will still have to abide by it. And again, maybe this wasn't the case before, but it's the case now. Everyone will have public notice. Whoever comes in the future will not be able to hold that sort of event without coming to you first. Whether they have shared parking agreements that are recorded with the Register of Deeds or not is inconsequential. If you're not satisfied, and when I say you, I don't mean you, I mean the general, you, the city. If the city's not satisfied that there are enough parking spots for a particular event, the city will deny it. It's public notice. I mean, I think that's what you're trying to achieve with that. I think that's what Clark maybe was trying to achieve with 11, but you have it, so, with 1.
Mr. Hermes, I think the dynamics of the application I think we all understand what you're trying to accomplish here. I'm going to ask a procedural question to Ms. Erickson. If a motion gets on the floor to grant approval without condition 11, and it doesn't pass, where can we go from there?
Well, in that instance, the motion would fail. So the original site plan conditions, as you see on the screen without all the highlight and everything like that, would still remain in place.
Can a motion follow? If that motion fails to grant approval, can a motion follow to postpone and have the applicant come back with documentation or whatever?
That would be up to the commission. Yeah. If
Procedurally, we could.
yes, you can always make a motion to postpone. Yes.
I'm going to voice my frustration. I want to hold our planning consultant and our legal representative accountable to bring us in here this evening without anything in writing, without any of the items that we're asking to eliminate from the conditions in writing, without any confirmation from our planning consultant on the number of parking spaces. The applicant says he meets it. We don't know because planner hasn't said, hey, they do meet the parking requirements. As well, if I misunderstood, I don't know, but they're saying they submitted a site plan dated September, they gave us a site plan September 27, and here we are October 4, and the board doesn't have anything in front of us. So that's my opinion. I got other people talking. Commissioner Meyer?
I have a quick question. If a motion is put in place to remove number 11, do we need a total agreement that, can we do this without 7 of us agreeing on this?
Yes, majority of those present.
Okay, I thought so, I just wanted to clarify that.
Good question, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Warnick?
Yeah, just for the technical issue of those names of businesses that are on that, if we can go back to that 11, or, all of those could change overnight. Myers has been called the Source before, it's been Sam's Club. The Lions Club could change or leave and go to a different building. Total Soccer could change its name. So with these kind of agreements, I like the generic fact that they can supply the agreements as needed per event, because it just makes more sense. So that they still have to provide it. It's kind of tough to record something. I think it can be recorded as a generic with all those involved, but each one individually, I like the idea of not having those listed anyway, but it makes the most sense to me that way. That's it.
Commissioner Farina?
I think the application that gets filed with the deed is by address, not by name.
Okay.
Okay? But I'd like to make a motion to postpone until we can get written recommendations from legal, recommendations from the planner. Okay? That's my motion.
Do I have support for that motion? Support? Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Farina, support by Commissioner Meyer to,
Mr. Farina, if I may, can I just clarify what you mean by recommendation from our office, just so I know exactly what is?
What was the discussion? You know, what is your, that's why you're here, is to make recommendations, okay? On legal. All right? And I haven't got anything before this to look over and evaluate and try and look at.
But I guess what I'm asking is what, a recommendation is
I'm
to,
not here to debate with you. That's what I want.
I just want to know what I can provide, our office can provide, so we know what is actually needed from our office in terms of what, in your mind, a recommendation would look like.
Would be what the discussion was and what you recommend the path forward, which is reasonable and safest for the city.
can it maybe help Commissioner Farina? How about providing us with documentation of your last meeting, which I understood was just yesterday, with the items that you want to eliminate? And then the planning recommendation that confirms that the required parking spaces are on the plan. That's just my, trying to help you,
Yeah.
Commissioner Farina.
I've said at this meeting that it's obviously up to the discretion of the commission. I don't know how much my office can truly get involved with what the applicant is requesting. I can give legal guidance as to what a cross-access easement is or what removal may logistically look like in a condition, but I don't know if it's our office's.
Read, okay. And support by Commissioner Meyer. Ms. Greenia, would you do a roll call, please?
I agree with that, but reluctantly. So I guess I am saying yes.
Chair Zarnicki?
Yes.
Can I change mine to no?
You'll have to ask them, Ms. Erickson, I don't know.
if you want to,
The Lions Club, Myers closes or sells, Fraser School, you know what I'm saying? So can't be concrete forever.
Anybody want to make another motion?
I'm going to try.
Okay.
It sounds like I'd like to make a motion to remove number 11.
for 00
Don't say that so fast.
Utica Road Outlot Development Site Plan Amendment. Does that work for the intro?
2108, you said?
Site Plan 2108, yes.
Okay. I'd like a motion to change number 11 from Site Plan 2108 at 34400 Utica Road to remove number 11.
Have support for that motion?
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Commissioner Kyle and support by Commissioner Perry to modify the site plan for Big Boy Restaurant located at 34400 to eliminate condition number 11 for the original agreement.
From the original agreement.
Does everybody understand the motion, and is there any discussion on the motion?
I would have just two recommendations. In condition number 5, my recommendation, just based on wording, would be agreements for easements for cross-access, shared parking, and utilities between the existing hockey land parcel, including the north parking lot, and the Fraser Hockey Land Property LLC properties, including the outlet parcel proposed as part of this development application in the northern vacant lot, are required, and leave the second sentence as is. That, just for clarification, as I kind of mentioned, that would include the Big Boy parcel and the previously owned Lions Club parcel, with those cross-access easements that we've been discussing this evening.
Well, you just said it, and I'm not going to remember.
But I'll tell you what, you have me lost, so you're going to have to repeat.
Oh, I know what she's saying. She wants to leave.
Yeah, so for number 6, obviously the applicant is requesting to remove that in its entirety. That's up to the board, should you want to remove that in its entirety. Well, if you take out the lease agreement and lease agreements and just put and leasing, and just put a period after agreements, that would at least just give the city some notice that perhaps a property sold or something like that for shared parking with the Big Boy one or with the former Lions Club one. They're just on notice. It's not,
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
that would be my other recommendation.
I agree with it.
Okay, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
And then you should have some wording there that you have to just, you may have to alter other provisions, right? Because like, for instance, you have number 5 would have to be altered, right?
Yep, so that's what,
We already talked.
yep, so that would be my recommendation for number 5, should Mr. Kyle want to adopt that.
Well, we're going kind of far now. What was 14?
No, just the word shared parking would, it's basically just taking out references to shared.
And that's what I said at the beginning.
But the shared parking, we're keeping in on 5, so 14 would have to just mirror it.
Yep.
So that would be my just suggested changes, should Mr. Kyle
And I agree with all of them.
wish to
Confirm all?
incorporate those. I'm sure Cindy will get it in the
Pretty much
minutes.
Well, I'll be talking to you in the
Yeah,
morning.
I know.
We'll be discussing
I
these
know,
things, so I
and
get the
then-
verbiage
It goes back
correct.
to number 1.
Yeah,
You know, if they plan on having an event, they're going to call the city. Number 1, everything under that really doesn't mean much. Because the city's going to have it, they're going to have a plan, the city's going to approve it, or they're not going to approve it. We can put all the stuff or take all the stuff out, but number 1 is what they're going to use every time.
So I guess just for procedural sake, it would, my recommendation, and it sounds like Mr. Kyle would like to adopt in his motion, would be to amend condition number 5, as I mentioned, amend condition number 6, as I mentioned, and
And then on the next page.
well, number 7, though, it's kind of generic in case there's any agreements. And then obviously delete condition number 11. And then my other recommendation would just to add a condition saying all other conditions from the original approval are maintained, so,
All other conditions are maintained from the
from,
original.
from site plan 2108.
Okay, we're good.
Well, doesn't 2108 have a deceleration lane in it?
No, it's not in the conditions. The deceleration lane is not in the condition of approval for 2108.
So we're not talking about approving the site plan at this point.
The site plan that would be submitted to the city, obviously an updated site plan would,
Acceptance with this motion.
yes.
Thing a lot easier.
I understand, but it's also, Chair, it's up to the applicant to also make that request to the commission.
Granting the approval. And if we could state it that the planning consultant does review the number of parking spaces and confirm that,
Need it, then McKenna would just tell you, I guess. I think that's how.
well, I don't know what the,
So they would be over whatever the ZBA allowed to be on site.
okay, all right. And can you kind of rotate the names? I feel like sometimes when I vote first that they're kind of, you know,
I apologize. And Commissioner Farina.
No,
Myself and and Miss Sayre are kind of going to tag team this tonight. I know that I provided everyone with a chart last month that Mr. Denault had drafted that kind of gave ideas for provisions, comparisons to the current ordinance, should there be a provision, and then kind of some ideas or some blank space to kind of make comments on. Tonight, we are looking at pages 2 through 11 of that chart, dealing with general regulations, permissible signs in all zoning districts, and prohibited signs. The idea is basically, we'll kind of go through each section from that chart, see if the commission has any thoughts on it, whether they're positive, some provisions to the commission next time.
do you want to go up, you know, bullet point by bullet point, or you just want an overall?
If at any point any commissioners have any questions, we'll be happy to answer. I believe I have a slide for questions on each section also for just general city, including zoning, regulatory, and specialized codes. For example, property maintenance code. Number for placement by the city. I suppose I'll pause there for any questions.
I'm going to go back to number 2. I have a question. Were your note revised to say across the board as opposed to designating those?
So as Ms. Erickson stated, the second column is a kind of a comparison of what
Light is that these regulations are only applicable to certain zoning districts, which is why we are recommending adding these general regulations that we have.
is easements or trees unless placed or approved for placement by a governmental entity as public signs or warning signs.
Can we go back to 3? That's good, because we always had a problem here with putting on city property signs. But I think it opens up a lot by saying unless placed or approved for placement by the city. Let's say the new city manager comes along and has a favorite and says, okay for them, but not for others of the same, say, business background or something. And just because that person likes them or something, then it's put on city property all of a sudden. It's not firm enough that we say it should be something that either the cities, and what we've always done, if it's a city event, like if they had the running stuff, the dare stuff, then we put it on there. But this opens it up, I think, to allowing subjective, yeah. So if there's a way to word it
Okay, we'll look at that.
to make sure that I think that would just cover. We're trying to make this thing be all-inclusive and the best it can be, and I think that's one thing it can be.
All right, no, noted. And so our intention, I don't know if this was mentioned or not, is to take the feedback from each planning session and draft up the ordinance for you to look at. The next one as we go into more, but you also get to see the ordinance kind of come together as we write it based on your feedback from each night, yes.
Okay, cool.
Do you want comments like that, though? Or-
Yes, that's appreciated, yep. All right, jumping back to number 5, permanent signs shall not be placed in a required side yard setback or within 12 feet of a public right-of-way. Signs shall not be placed in a manner that obstructs or diminishes sight lines for vehicular travel, obstructs driver vision, or creates potential hazards to pedestrian safety. All signs shall comply with the corner clearance requirements set forth in, and that would be a reference to that ordinance section.
I've got a question from Commissioner Farina here.
Number 5, it had, before you had, we had in the ordinance, different sizes of signs. Is that going to be clarified some other place, the size of signs that are going to be for these different areas, or is that open?
I believe the size of the signs will be addressed later in later discussions.
Any questions on 5? Go to 6. You were doing 6, I think, right?
Yep.
Did 6 about the obstructions. Any questions on 6? Comments? We'll move to 7. Signs must have a minimum clearance of 8 feet 6 inches above a non-public sidewalk and provide appropriate emergency vehicle clearance above driveways and maneuvering lanes. 8, applications for approval of a sign permit will not be processed or placed on an agenda for any public hearing, nor will a sign permit be issued on properties with outstanding and unresolved code violations without a code compliance agreement. 9, signs shall not have more than 2 sides. And 10, no sign shall be painted directly onto the wall of a building.
How would you consider a mural, though? Do you consider a mural a sign then, or what is the discretion there?
So we haven't really gotten to the definitions portion of all of this, but I will make a note just to kind of flag mural and see how that plays into it once we kind of get to the definitions portion.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, number 11, signs shall not be equipped with audio capabilities, and sound shall not be projected from any sign except that menu boards approved as part of a drive-through facility or signage designed for purposes of complying with the laws enacted for the protection of persons with disabilities shall not be restricted by this provision. 12, signs may not project images beyond the face of the sign and may not emit any odors or visible matter such as smoke or steam. 13, no person, entity, owner, business, or tenant shall allow an obsolete sign to be maintained on a property for more than 30 days after same has become obsolete because of the discontinuance of the business, service, or activity which the sign advertises, relocation to another site, or for any other reason. The fact that the obsolete sign is non-conforming shall not be construed as modifying any of the requirements of this section.
Madam Chair?
Oh,
May I ask a
Yes,
question?
please.
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
The 30 days, does that include political signs, I would think? That's a question I get a lot. How long can people leave them up? Some people leave them up in perpetuity. I know there's big issues with freedom of speech. That changed a lot of the political sign language.
We'll make sure that it complies with all the regulations and stuff like that, but I'll make a note of it because I think that when I was looking through this, thought, does it, so we'll make a note.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep.
And Ms. Sarah, can I interrupt you? I'm questioning the clearance for the distance clearance of 15 feet. Does that go throughout the sign ordinance, and do we feel that's enough of a clearance?
Which number?
Oh, I'm going back to 6. I can't go as quick as you do. I'll admit it. So number 6 is in the second column, and you have your 15 feet of distance for your intersection. And I think that carries out through the sign ordinance. I'm just questioning if 15 feet is enough.
The center is existing,
Yes.
Yes.
and the left is what they're suggesting. Which they don't have a number in there. It just shows you the front page. Existing.
Okay.
Ideas.
Well, when you say left, there's no
Yeah, there's no number in
There's
here.
no number there. Okay.
I noticed that when we went through it.
Okay. It's just something consideration. I mean, I'm not that prolific on signs, so I'm just questioning if it should be 15 or 25.
Because in the existing, it says 15 feet, but then the ideas that you have on number 6, it doesn't have a height at all.
Yeah. I know that in other communities, I've seen 25, I've seen 15. I mean, it kind of varies, so I think it probably, I mean, any feedback would be, obviously.
Wouldn't it be,
I'm okay with my comment. So you can take it into consideration. Go ahead, Lauren.
So 14, every sign, including the sign structure, shall be maintained in a safe structural condition and in a neat, clean, secure, and attractive condition with upright, secure supports. All sign materials shall be kept free of defective or missing parts, peeling, corrosion, or other surface or support deterioration, and in compliance with the current provisions of the International Property Maintenance Code, with local amendments as adopted by the city. All signed copies shall be maintained intact, free of defacement, and free of missing characters. If the sign is illuminated, all lighting fixtures and sources of illumination shall be maintained in a manner that renders them safe and in proper working order. I believe is that.
excuse me, this is something we had a big discussion on before, when we were doing this, that signs go in disrepair. What is the city's recourse when signs do go in disrepair? Is that going to be covered? I mean, is there going to be some, actually, the previous sign ordinance that we submitted said that every 10 years, the signs had to be inspected and reapproved.
Yeah, so I do think that falls under the code enforcement, and I do think enforcement is outlined in a further discussion.
Okay, thank you.
This covers it good, though. I mean, gives them, code enforcement, some beef to work with, is that.
Seems to.
Yeah.
And then finally, we have for all signs other than a sign within a public right-of-way, the sign setback shall be measured from the property line, or in the case of an access easement, from the edge of the easement to the closest point of the sign. And I'll just put up any questions on any of the general regulations we just discussed or comments. All right, so now we'll move on to signs permitted in each district. So these are signs that would be permitted no matter the zoning district, and there are 6 recommendations. The first being public signs. The second being traffic control devices on private or public property installed and maintained to comply with the Michigan Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and if not covered, with the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices adopted by the Federal Highway Administration. Numerals that identify the address of the property in accordance with the applicable laws, codes, and regulations so that public safety responders can easily identify the address from the public street. So this will include display on building facade, freestanding signs, tenant spaces, rear entrances, and height of numerals, color, and contrast. Any questions on any of those comments?
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Barr is leaving. She wasn't feeling ill. I mean, she was feeling ill at the beginning of the meeting, and she's exiting now. You okay?
You need us to Drive you home?
You okay driving, Joanne? You okay driving?
Oh, yeah, I'm okay.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
okay. Okay, continue, Ms. Sierra.
So number 4, required government signs that warn of a danger or prohibit access to the property either generally or specifically. Signs installed by misdig, utility companies, lawn treatment companies, and similar signs intended to warn of danger or alert the reader to a potentially dangerous condition or the existence of utility pipes or lines on the property. And finally, in addition to one United States flag and one official flag of the state of Michigan displayed on a permitted flagpole or on a flagstaff affixed to a house on a single-family residential property, up to 2 additional flags may be displayed on a permitted flagpole or on the house without being counted against the individual sign limitations or the total square footage allowed under this section for temporary signage. Any questions or comments on permitted signs in every district?
So does it, the way you're saying that the address is on a building, that is required in the building code, but it's hard to go back at somebody and say, this will force people to have an address on their house that presently, can we go retroactive to stuff like that, to something like that? Because it is for the safety. It's for people for the public safety to know immediately where a house is, because they're given an address, and that's the biggest problem, is trying to figure out sometimes. So I'm wondering, is this something that can be forced on people?
That I would definitely have to look into, because as I read the way that they're presented this evening is that this is just permitted in the zoning districts, and it would be permitted citywide. Whether or not the city could require that would definitely be something I'd have to look into. But I'll make a note of it.
Okay.
All right, so we're on our final one, which is prohibited signs, and we have 5 recommendations. Number 1 is signs that violate any federal, state, or local law, code, or regulation. Number 2 is signs that violate zoning regulations governing home occupations as an accessory use. Number 3 is festoon signs. And number 4 is projecting signs. Number 5 is signs whose construction, design, location, or other physical characteristics are determined by any code official or law enforcement official to create a safety hazard or to be anathema to general welfare, including but not limited to signs of a size, location, movement, coloring, or manner of illumination, which may be confused with or construed as, or which may conflict with, a traffic control device, or which hide from view any traffic or street sign or signal. Signs consisting of moored balloons or other type of tethered floating signs, unless approved by the city planner in conjunction with an approved temporary use and if tethered to the ground. Banners, posters, pennants, ribbons, streamers, LED lights, string of light bulbs, spinners, or similarly moving devices, or signs which may move or swing as a result of wind pressure or other power source unless approved by the city planner in conjunction with approval of a temporary use for a special event of limited duration, permitted as holiday decorations or otherwise permitted elsewhere in this section. Signs which have blinking, flashing, or fluttering lights or other illuminating devices which exhibit movement. Roof signs. Signs that consist of or include a searchlight. Yes, Commissioner Farina?
Flashing lights would be like on an LED, because we have signs within Fraser now that are flashing. One of them is Hockeyland's sign, they flash it.
Yeah, so that would then become, that would be non-conforming under this. Commissioner Meyer?
I was wondering too if something could be added. It says here, signs consisting of moored balloons or other types of tethered floating signs. It says approved by the city planner in conjunction with approved temporary signs and if tethered to the ground. Well, I can think of two instances, not in the city of Fraser. One is at the corner of 13 and Little Mac. It's that new oil change facility. They have a balloon that's tethered to the roof. And another one that I know of in Clinton Township is the Harbor House or whatever the restaurant is right there that used to be in front of the old Fountain View. They have a crab or what have you on top of the roof. It's tethered to the roof. So I wonder if we could add something to the ordinance that states that maybe we don't accept that, or that is not an acceptable sign. Because I know like with one in Clinton Township, they would put it up and then they'd have to take it down. You know, it was like they put it up for as long as they could, and then the township would tell them to take it down. So I wonder if we could maybe add something like that, if we think that's important, because I know of at least two instances around us where they have that.
Yeah, we can definitely include that in our draft.
Wouldn't that it be included with temporary signs? Is there a separate section still for temporary signs with approval by city administration?
Are you asking if there's a further discussion?
Yeah, I didn't go far enough ahead to start looking if there's more with temporary signs. That might include something like that.
That's a good point, Randy, because like the gas station down on 13 and Utica has like 6 or 8 temporary signs that are up there from.
And they're supposed to only be for 30 days or opening time or, even a week only, some of these. Then they get carried away that way. But as long as it falls, because it might be allowed something like this crab or something on something for a grand opening.
Yeah, I just double-checked my schedule as well, because I don't have it admittedly committed to memory, but it looks like in March, we're slated to discuss temporary signage.
All right, good. So we can bring that up again or whatever if that's the case.
So I think we're on G's. This is still prohibited, signs that contain or consist of strings of light bulbs. Portable signs kept in a stationary location and visible.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but why would that be prohibited?
The string light bulbs?
Yeah.
I believe the outside lighting string lights were kind of a code enforcement issue, if that's
A temporary thing, and
I
they probably don't last as long, so maybe it ruined the look of the sign. I don't know. I'm thinking, because we did have, the whole thing back in the old days was that we did now allow neon lighting.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, they start coming up with those rope lights.
Right.
And we try to enforce it, and that's not neon lighting, it's a rope light. And it's just like these strings of lights, they start burning out bulbs, and if they don't
I
replace
look
them.
at several of these liquor stores around here, and they have
Have
all
the
of these.
whole window.
The whole window is lined.
Yeah, so it changes the
The look of the building.
lighting, everything, and then if they're allowed to go, they go one color, and somebody else goes a different color. It's the thing with uniformity then, how do you control that kind of stuff? So that's something we can look at as we go along, too.
All right, so I guess finally, portable signs kept in a stationary location and visible from a public way. And then there is an exception for operable vehicles that are properly licensed and plated and which are adorned or embedded with permanent graphics, information, and/or messages that are visible to passerbys shall only be parked on a property owned or operated by the vehicle owner or pertaining to an activity underway on the property where it is parked and shall be kept in a lawful vehicular parking or storage location, a minimum of 30 feet from any public right-of-way.
Yeah, that's like free advertising. So the 30-foot is probably good. I don't know. We'd have to kind of visualize what it is, but it happens all the time. My brother does it. Of course, that's in another town. But yeah, because he's got it painted, he paid to have a sign all painted, and he drives the roads with it. They all have to, basically. Commercial vehicles have to have something. So they use that, and that's like free advertising. Once you paid for painting it, if you pull that into the parking lot, it becomes it could be a big sign if you got these big carry vans. So as long as, if that's another thing to think about, the 30-foot thing. Then. Does 30-foot make it work out or whatever?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding any of the sign?
Questions, comments for Ms. Seer?
That brings us to the end of today's discussion. We appreciate all your feedback.
Good start.
And next month, we'll do 11 through 15 pages. Is that right? Yeah. I'm sorry, Ms. Meyer, did you say something?
I just, thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
All right.
I like that.
We're going to go to agenda item number 7, the training date discussion.
So-
Who wants to speak on this? Ms. Green?
I was just going to mention that we have been discussing, I think for a couple of months, having a joint training session between Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. At our last meeting, both McKenna and our attorneys stated that they could be prepared to do this training session sometime this fall still. I did reach out to the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, and I did give a list of all of those that I got positive responses from that would like to come. So I guess what I need to do is, I did, after, thank goodness to Mr. Freenan, give you an entire October calendar, not just the middle of it, because, just in case you want to see the whole month, and then the November one. So I will be going to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting tomorrow. I guess if I could take 5 or 6 different dates to them, so we could come with, maybe a consensus of 2 or 3 in the 2 nights, and then I'll throw it back to McKenna and the attorneys, and we can kind of go from there and get a date set. So perhaps, sometime later in October, or I would like to be there, so I prefer not the first week of November, but if that's what you decide, then you do.
You want to go individual? Who's listed on it? Is that what you like to do? And is the training going to be in the evening hours?
I think that is what I heard from everyone. It sounded like this, we could start at 6. We don't have to wait till 7. And I think I heard last time perhaps Riley Renzel brought some snacks or something with them. I don't know.
Sounds like something Mr. Janot would do.
Yeah, and I
A whole big spread.
right, so that we could, and I do think I spoke with Chair Zarnicki as well about maybe setting up the room, so we were kind of like in a table, a circle or square, so we could all look at each other and just have a big conversation about it.
How long
So-
would it last?
I'm so sorry.
How long would it last?
I think that would be, I would say at least a couple of hours.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a time frame. I think the 6 o'clock sounds good.
Yeah, I feel like 6 might be a better time to start.
Mr. Warnick, I don't see your name on the list. Did you want to do training?
Oh, yeah, I would.
Oh, include Randy, 'cause I don't see Randy's.
I didn't respond, that was my fault.
Oh, right.
I was gone. I was out of town all last week.
All right.
So I
was.
I guess, Madam Chair, if you wanted to do that, go one person at a time to throw out some dates that you can make it, and I have my calendars in front of me. So just bear with me, I'm going to go kind of slow.
I know, because it might be a little confusing, so I appreciate your patience. Commissioner Meyer, do you have any dates that you're able, or is it easier not able? To me, it's easier to say I'm not able to do.
Yeah,
Not able, maybe?
not able.
Well, in the month of October, it would be the Thursdays in October.
What date is that?
I'm sorry. It would be Thursday, the 12th, or tomorrow, which you wouldn't be doing it tomorrow, but tomorrow being the 5th, so it would be the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. 10th,
Yeah.
24th.
Can I look at yours?
She's looking at October.
I'm sorry.
Right, 12, 19.
The 10th, the 17th, and the 24th.
This is right.
Wait a minute,
no,
this is
that's-
not right.
Yeah, tomorrow's the
Oh, I
5th.
see, yeah, look at that. You gave us the wrong.
Hey, I don't,
Wait,
That's
You
my
gave
number.
us-
today is the 4th, right?
Yes, today's the
Today's
4th.
the 4th, okay.
Where?
So,
Yeah, you
we're not
gave us
going to
wrong.
talk about tomorrow. We're
Correct, we're not doing it tomorrow.
we're not doing it tomorrow,
Today's the-
okay. So
today's the 4th, isn't
The
it?
12th,
yeah.
the
But
19th,
after that, it's,
the
why
26th,
is it not right?
those 3 days.
Oh, I didn't, okay.
Friday, the 20th. And would we be doing it on a weekend?
I highly doubt it, but
Okay,
that's just
that-
my,
Okay, I'm just
My
throwing the
thinking.
question out. And then Halloween in the month of October.
So I've got the 12th, the 19th, the 26th, the 20th, and the 31st. You are not available those days
And the
in
27th, I'm sorry.
in October.
Yes.
How about November?
November, well, the 1st is our meeting.
Right.
And then Friday, the 24th, and Monday, the 27th.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Perry, what days are you not available in October?
Probably just the 11th and the 31st. Just those 3 days.
November?
I think I'm open in November. Nothing. Whatever, I mean, any day.
Okay.
do you want training?
Sure.
I'm not on the list too, okay. You're going to get
Add
more
me,
people
add
here
me up.
than who responded.
Okay.
I'm on the list, right?
Why? Hey, that's not for sure yet. Don't jinx it.
Commissioner Farina.
No Tuesday am I available, and I have everything else marked on the calendar, Cindy, if you want.
I would love that, if I may. Thank you so much. Okay.
They're never going to find it.
Chair Zarnicki?
The dates I'm not available,
Yep.
October 18, 18, 24, and 27, not available. In November, I'm not available on the 14th or the 28th.
Okay. Mr. Kyle?
Of course, not the 31st. In October, any other day, I'm good. In November, should be good any day except for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
That's not including weekends.
Correct, these are just weekdays.
Yep, I'm good.
Correct. Yep.
And Randy?
Mine would be all the Thursdays. Can't interfere with bowling.
You can skip bowling.
I could.
What?
It's because he's not on anymore. And my birthday, the 19th, I can't be then.
So is that no Thursdays in
No Thursdays.
October or November?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the hunting season, the November 12th through 15th. Well, I just won't be here.
Okay.
Well, it'd be the 13th, 14th, 15th of November.
Okay, so Chair Zarnicki, I will hope to get to those dates after I speak to Zoning Board of Appeals tomorrow night.
Good luck, Cindy.
Yeah, I'm thinking perhaps next week you'll get some dates from me. I only say that because I'm still trying to finish up some election
Understood.
duties that I really have to get
Then
to.
you got to call them to see what day they can do it.
Right. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank
input.
you.
I appreciate-
Thank you
Could I
very
ask
much.
a request? Could
Yeah.
you give us a little bit of, because I work till 5:30, and to get here for 6, I have to talk to my management and say, can I please leave early? They let me come here, they let me come early for this meeting, but I may have to rework my schedule, so can I just get a little bit of leeway, please?
I'll certainly do the best I can.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.
No, I'm just saying,
Yep.
Agenda item 8, public communication on non-agenda items. There are none. Now, agenda item 9, monthly reports for September 2023. Everybody have the opportunity to review it and have any questions, discussion?
I noticed the Dairy Queen, the roof is coming off. Is there anything being done about that? I know we were in litigation about that, and he came to our There's a big hole in the roof now.
Not to my knowledge on it, but I can follow up with
Okay.
the building manager this week.
I think it's be a code enforcement, correct? I think it'd be code enforcement.
I can follow up on that.
Anything else? Agenda item 10, Zoning Board of Appeals Member Liaison Report. Commissioner Farina.
We didn't have a meeting, and I will not be at the meeting tomorrow night because I'm going on vacation. So I will have a report for the next one. They are having a meeting tomorrow night. But
On the agenda, do you know what's on the agenda? I can remind you, I looked at the agenda. It's the car wash that was in front of us last month, going for their parking variance.
right, I did not look at the agenda because I am not going to be at the meeting.
I understand
He's in
that.
vacation mode.
Mike Lessig is going to run the meeting.
Okay, so anybody can come to the meeting tomorrow night and see what happens. Agenda item 11, Commissioners' comments and items of concern. So let's start with Commissioner Warnick.
Oh, okay. This has been, I've been thinking about this for a while, but when I talked to somebody this week, a wise man, and it's not to go against anybody, planners or legal counsel, it's kind of general, but it does have to do with planning and planners more, but and he said, and I just want to say it because we need this in our minds here as we make decisions. How do I say this all? The biggest problem with planners is they create a problem with pervious surfaces by requiring more concrete. We've become a nation of concrete. And that's why we have more flooding and everything, is because we keep wanting things covered with concrete, parking lots. If you look now, the times are different. The stores aren't even as crowded anymore. We got all these parking requirements. So what came up is this Lions Club property here. There is no problem having a pervious surface of grass for them to park for an emergency thing or anything. Heck, we have it at our church festival. We allow people to park on the grass. And that's nothing wrong with that if that's what they want to do, but it gives us a pervious surface for water to drain. Our biggest problem in this country is that we create flooding because that water goes to either a retention pond or a underground storage thing that backs up when we have heavy rains. It has nowhere to go. Take a look at that aerial view for Fraser Hockeyland. That's the only grass area in that area. If we don't allow that to stay, we're doing a disservice to our community. We're causing more flooding in ours. I want to be the first community to not have all that stuff because it's happening all over the place because of planners. I'm sorry, but it's because it's in their plans. They come up and say, you got to do this. You got to provide this many parking spots. We have too many restrictions that way. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but I'm just going to vent right here with that because if we don't stop it in our community, nobody else is gonna. We need to have a different approach. We have that power here to stop that from happening. And I have to say it, it's just because we can leave it alone all this time, but when we got something like that Fraser Hockeyland thing, that's the one that really threw me when this guy said that to me. And he's a planner.
And I agree with you, but I don't think it falls on the planner. It falls on.
It falls on us. I'm
On
saying when
us.
it becomes, though, from planning process,
But we're only.
requiring, because they're using what we have in our ordinances. They're just saying what's in our
It's a
ordinances.
matter of our reviewing our ordinance.
That could be and doing it. So I'm just saying, what this wise man
And give
told
us
me.
the options for bioswales or, give us that option to say, hey,
Different things for,
reserve a certain area and just make it a pervious, pervious area. But in case you need parking in the future, I can't even think of the term I want, Ms. Erickson. You can turn it into a parking lot. You can make it a green area, and if you need parking for whatever reason, you find out, years later, I need more parking, you can make it into a parking.
Like bank parking or reserve parking or something
Yes.
like that.
But there's nothing wrong with parking on grass.
No, I agree with you.
At least the water can penetrate somewhere, and it's
great-
become a big problem. I just looking at these things, think about Lakeside Mall and all that stuff. Where's that water gonna go? Where it goes is through the drainage system and it ends up somewhere in the drains or so. We got the high school. I'm backed up to the Harrington drain. When it rains, it goes up, and then it floods over on a heavy rain. And we're getting all the water from the school through the drainage. I'm just drawing my blank. But yeah, all that water goes, and then it goes to that drain. So you're taking all that parking area and the buildings. You got to think about this. We're building big buildings. Think about Amazon over there and the stuff like that. That water that's up for that roof part now has to go into an area. So it really, with all the things we're doing out there, and yeah, this is the times, and that's what's happening. But we got a lot of vacant things and things like that, and they just keep adding to it because then nobody's there to maintain them when we get vacant buildings. So I just want to, I had to do this just to basically get everybody thinking.
Don't feel so guilty. I would say,
As
add
we-
it to our list and say, let's review.
As we talk,
Good time, review
yeah.
our parking requirements.
I
Commissioner,
just,
go ahead.
I just read this week that there's a new mat out that they put down on the ground. It's made out of used tires. And it allows the water to go through it, and the grass grows through it, and so you could use it for parking and/or something else.
So there is
All kinds of
potential.
alternative methods.
When you talk about the Lions Club parking lot, that was always in their plan to use that as parking.
Yes, and it wasn't going to be paved, but we started, and I was one of them that said, this is great, they can pave that now, they own it. But I'm look at the aerial view, and I
Nice to
think,
see green.
man, yeah, there's nothing there between total soccer, all them.
How do you park there in the winter?
You can still, we've done it on different grass things. It's setting it up. If you're going to have an event, you kind of set things up that way. You can't predict anything. We don't know if we're going to have a major snowstorm or something. And they can still plow something like that. And especially like Frank said, if there's something like that, they can still plow it. They just can't take the blade right to the ground exactly. But you can still provide walking surfaces. If you're going to have an event, you want the people there. You're going to do what it takes. If it costs you a little more to get somebody that can run a good snowplow to do things, that's what you do. And let's face it, you're looking at one time maybe that it might intersect with bad weather too or something. The bad weather thing is, it happens. We can't stop it. We don't know when it's going to happen. But I'd say the majority of the time we can utilize things like that and not have to pave them. So, that's all.
Anything else?
That's it.
Commissioner Kyle?
I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Farina?
I'm good.
I took too long.
Commissioner Perry?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Meyer?
Nothing at this time.
I have one comment before I ask the other people to speak. I was wondering if the city has been getting any calls about the parking at Juan Blanco's, our new restaurant. Very, very popular, is right across from Hockey Land, very popular. I drive by a lot, and you see the parking lot full, you see people parking in the residential area. Last night, as I was driving by, I saw a sign saying valet parking, and I'm thinking, where's the valet parking the cars? And maybe you, Ms. Sierra, don't know if there's been any calls. I know it's got to be a code enforcement issue.
I'm not aware, but I will follow up with building.
Yeah, just look into it and see.
I know when we went there, majority of people was parking at the golf course. But then if you looked at the right side of the building, they got the parking lot that goes way back, it was empty. So I don't know if people know that if they come in from the one side, they don't know what's back there. But the golf
Correct.
course guy
And the
finally,
golf
he put a
course
sign
could
up.
be putting up signage saying golf course only parking. I'm
He did, he's
assuming.
put it up finally.
I live in that sub, and last night there was a car parked not on Juan Blanco's side, on the other side, facing the wrong way. There was another truck that was out 2 feet into the road, parked to left, and they were
Facing,
going,
yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of issues that are being created there. Luckily, the Schwinn Bike Shop is closed because that's flooded every night with parking there.
That retail center. Ms. Greenia, you have something to say?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just did want to note that there have been people calling in with complaints and that the city manager is aware and she
Okay.
has been addressing it, so for
So
sure.
city is aware of it.
The city is aware, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Yep.
Greenia. All right. Do you have any other comments, Ms. Greenia?
No, thank you so much for allowing me to interject earlier. I appreciate it. about the
Okay,
sign.
not a problem, anytime, when I see that hand raised, anytime. Ms. Erickson
I think I have talked enough this evening, so I have no comments.
and Ms. Sierra, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Okay. Agenda item number 12 is adjourned. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
I
Move.
second.
Support. Moved by Commissioner Farina and support by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn the meeting. Do we have to do a roll call? Say, all those say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? None. Thank you for a very nice meeting. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.